D-Day was the largest air, land, and sea battle ever fought on this planet. And if you looked out over the water, all you could see was ships, tons of ships. Oh, going overhead, there were this steady drone of airplanes going across. Of course, the first ones were the paratroopers going over to behind Utah Beach, and their objective was to seal those causeways. There were several causeways from the ocean to the beach, and they had to keep those causeways open, and that's what the paratroopers were supposed to do. Well, the weather was still bad on D-Day, and they got scattered, the paratroopers, and they couldn't get organized, and we were all scattered. We mislanded in our sectors where we were supposed to be. So it was just kind of a snafu operation there to begin with. And we were, as I said before, we were very anxious to go, and we wanted to go, but we got sick going in, with seasick. Everybody was vomiting, and we didn't have anything to vomit in, so we'd just take our helmets off and vomit in your helmet and throw it off and wash your helmet out with about a foot of water in the bottom of the boat. And that's why we went in to, there's 12 miles into shore. The plan for D-Day was the paratroopers were to land first, of course, at about midnight of June the 5th or June the 6th. And their job was to seal those causeways and to raise Cain behind the German lines and get the Germans all upset, and they didn't know what was going on. And our job, the 1st Battalion, 116th, which was A, B, C, and D Company of the 116th, which had the highest casualties of any unit that day, their job was to, the Verville draw was they had 5 exit draws off the beach. The only way we could get our tanks and heavy equipment across the beach and up into France so that we could engage the Germans. And our job was to get land against that Verville draw, which was the worst of all the draws. That was we had concrete roads off the beach up into Verville, which is a little town about a mile off the beach. And our job was to open that draw up so that we could bring our heavy stuff in by a strict timetable, so that it was very imperative that we do this. And of course, that's where the Germans were. They were waiting for us in those draws. They had, I understand, there was several pillboxes. I've been back to Normandy since, and I've counted numerous pillboxes. They were sitting up in those hills, camouflaged. We couldn't see them. We had 400 yards of flat sand to cross before we could get to the Germans to do any damage. And of course, the beach was graded up into the teeth of these guns and all kinds of weaponry, barbed wire, mines. The beach was completely exposed because we landed in extreme low tide so that the underwater obstacles could be seen and avoided. And so as we, on our way in, of course, everybody got sick, and it was cold. It was June, but the weather must have been in the 50s because everybody was shivering and cold. I looked in my assault jacket, and I found a gas cape, which was made of plastic, and I used that to get under like a tent, and that's when I got seasick because of the lack of oxygen under that jacket. I just got deathly sick, and I would vomit in my helmet, wash it out and throw it out, and then bomb it again. And I did that all the way in. And until we got into where the guns opened up on us. And of course, all the sickness left. I was not cold anymore. Everything just straightened out for me. I guess I had my mind on more things than getting cold and my physical well-being. But we had about 12 miles in that LCA, and it was going, it was just real rough, and we were getting soaking wet, and the wind was blowing. It was pitch dark. We didn't know where we were going, and I think we got separated somewhere about 300 or 400 yards before we got to the beach. And that's when we started taking mortar and artillery fire. And most of the men got panicky, and they were jumping off of the back of the boat, and some of them were jumping off the sides. And when the ramp went down, we got up to where the surf was. Where it was just boom. The front of the LCA was going up and down, up and down. And the first man that exited our boat, he went off the front of the boat in the middle, and a surge of the water forced the landing craft up over on him, and he was hit in the head with that ramp, and he was killed right away. And that was the first person that I saw die that day. And then after that, it was back in the cliffs and bluffs. That's when the whole German army, it seemed like, opened up on us. Machine guns were the worst. They crisscrossed the front of the beach, and it was a cannonade of artillery, and that was exploding all around. A Company was our first company to land in our wave, and they hit the eye of the storm, and they lost 91 men killed within about 15 minutes, and most of the rest were wounded, except I think about 15 that survived. My company had 72 casualties. We had 5 of 9 of our officers were killed, including the captain. We had 10 sergeants, including the first sergeant, were killed. Several corporals and privates, and we had 35 wounded, most of them severely and never returned to duty. We were just completely separated, unorganized, and we finally got across. I finally got across the beach. I was a squad leader and a sergeant, and I got my men organized and got across the beach, and I think there was about 3 or 4 of us that actually got across. And when we got to the seawall, I had my rifle had gotten clogged up with sand, and I was going to tear it down and clean the sand out of my rifle. And I took my raincoat off out of my pack, and I spread it out so I could clean my rifle. And my raincoat was full of bullet holes. So I'd been subjected to rifle fire and machine gun fire as I was running across the beach. I did get across with my number 1 2 gunner and number 3 gunner, and they had 1 box of ammunition. We lost a machine gun in the water. The tripod we still had.